They've done like Khalif Raymond, who's with the Lions. They did Dwayne Casey, who's Pittman's coach, as well as Raptors coach, championship winning. I don't remember a time, honestly, where he wasn't in my life. That is unbelievable, Joe. Wow. So, folks, let me just say one thing. Let me have a sidebar here.
Hello and welcome to episode 36 of the Joe Dez Hour. Right beside me, I've got Bryan Rector, DJ B-Rec, Brachiosaurus Rex, whatever you want to call him. We got Bryan Rector with us right now. Bryan is a member of Big Time Plus with me. He's another journalist at Michigan State. He has done some amazing things, runs his own podcast called Confluence World. I've shouted out multiple times. Last few guests who talked about it was my producer in the Tessa Crush episode. He's made everything possible so far. It's been great. So today we're going to be highlighting Bryan. It's going to be pretty good. But first off, Bryan, can you just give the audience a little bit of an explanation for kind of how you got here, a little bit of timeline of your journey? And just before that, give a little context of where we are right now. I am in Bryan's home base right now, in his headquarters, as part of that 10 different location series that we're trying to do.
That's right. And Joe, let me first say thank you for creating the time to have me on, dude. And by the way, how in the world is it that you've done 36 episodes, Joe? That's major.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%. But no, as far as you said about like the journey and where we've come from, I would say it's happened in stages. You know, I really would. I would say that from 0 to 9, or maybe 10, but 9, we'll call it, was kind of just understanding a little bit of life, you know, and a little bit of how things were happening. And then 9 through like 14, a bunch of things shifted in my life. A bunch of change happened, and there were a lot of things that forced me to grow up pretty fast, and things that I realized about how the world works, man, and kind of the way that I wanted to move forward. And I got into everything I'm doing today with all the broadcasting, media, and the sporting environments in sophomore year of high school. And so I've been chasing that ever since. And it's been 6 or 7 years of strong-willed hard work, you know, and trusting in my faith and leaning on my background and all the challenges that had come from earlier to say, hey, this is where we want to go. So that's kind of how I would summarize that. But I love where we're at. And by the way, there's a long way to go.
You just mentioned it a second ago. We talked about just the beginning of this Confluence World. It's a podcast where it's supposed to connect God, NIL, sports, athletics, all of that together into one pure base. Can you talk about how you came up with that idea? I saw that it kind of was brought up a little bit during high school between you and one of the women's basketball players, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it was a show with my friend and shout out Amelia Bishop, who played at Wilsonville High School, where I went to high school. And her and I were friends growing up, for even dating back to middle school. And I'm trying to remember, I don't think earlier. I think it was middle school that kind of brought us together. But then, yeah, she started pursuing basketball at a high level, and as well was growing in her faith and realizing that there are a lot of linkages between what the Bible says about performance and about teamwork and about being in a community and about sportsmanship and all these different avenues that relate to sports that she was kind of learning about and saying, wait a second, there's actually like tangible ways that these two buckets of sports and faith are connected. And so when she was going on to pursue it at the collegiate level, the two of us came together. Because by then I had been working in broadcasting for 3 years at that point. And so I understood things from a different perspective of being inside a team, seeing how they work together, seeing the overarching story of a season, right? And how all the players are. And she and I said, there's got to be something here. And so we kind of had this idea senior year. Even at my graduation party, it was birthed of a conversation over, we were throwing beanbags in our backyard. And she said, you know what would be amazing is if we put this show together and brought athletes on. And it kind of fell through though, Joe, because she got so busy, remarkably busy as a Division I athlete. And she started at Northern Colorado in Greeley. And then after 1 year, she transferred to Seattle Pacific, which is a religiously affiliated school in Seattle. So it was like, wow, now it's all really coming together. But even so, and that was the beginning of this year that just happened, she said, I would love to do it with you, but I haven't found the time. And so I said, you know what? I've had enough time just sitting here waiting. We got to go. And so I've been pushing it really hard on my own and making sure that the conversations are had and the information is coming out during this last school year, 23-24.
It's funny how you guys both kind of end up on the same track anyway, even though it fell through initially. She ended up at Catholic school. You ended up watching the podcast, so it worked out in the end either way. But it's funny, you started with Amelia Bishop. Your first guest was Julia Bishop.
That's right.
There any relation? I assume not.
There's no.
Yeah, okay.
But ironically, and now that you said that, everybody who was watching the show or commenting went, wait a second, have you even thought about that? Like, you're having Julia on, but like, you started with Emmy, and like, you're still shouting out Emmy, but like, it's Julia. And so there was kind of that layaway, right? Of like, how did that happen? That was just a weird phenomenon that happened. But
can you talk a little bit about your experience with reaching out to the athletes, especially with that first time reaching out to Julia Bishop? It was your first time really reaching out and trying to get somebody on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Julia, it was unique because I had been involved with Michigan State men's club volleyball for the first 2 years I was here at MSU. And what's cool about that and where that link came from is I went to two guys who were leaders for me on the men's club team and said, what do you guys know about the women's D1 team? Is there anyone who you think would be good on the show? What do you think? And the first name that popped up was Julia. So my guy Clark, shout out Clark Jocelyn, who's at Central Michigan. He's now the assistant coach over there for their D1 team. He looked at me and said, hey, do Julia. And I said, oh my gosh, okay, fine. Sounds great. So I shot her a DM out of nowhere. And I could probably pull it up. I could probably give you a screenshot of what I said. But literally, I just went, hey, I've heard through the grapevine that you are a great speaker, that you have a high priority placed on your faith, and that you're a leader for your team and somebody who I would love to talk to. So I'm starting the show, and I would love if we could connect and sit down for an interview because I have this sheet of questions I want to go over. And that's kind of how it was. And she said, absolutely, it would be great. I would love to do it. And we hit the ground running. And ever since, I've reached out to athletes professionally. I've reached out to athletes collegiately from across the country. I've reached out to a couple high school athletes. And here at Michigan State really has been the focus, but not everyone. I've tried to make it a more worldly show, right? A more perspectives from here, there, and everywhere. But I would say it's a lot of emails, if I can track them down. It's a lot of Instagram DMs, some of which go through, some of which don't. And then word of mouth. Like what I'll do is, every time I do a show, I'll bring on the guest, and as we're done and we're speaking off camera, I will look at them and say, hey, do you have anyone in mind for who to go to next? And we'll just go from there. And literally, it comes down to whenever I'm reaching out, I'll say, here's what I do at Michigan State. I work for Big Ten Network and Spartan Vision. Here's what my show is. It's about faith and sports. And here's what I would like to do with you. A 30-minute Zoom, an hour-long face-to-face interview. It's just those three parts. And that's my message I try and get out.
Before we go a little deeper in the podcast stuff, can you kind of talk about that experience of coaching or, well, helping out with the men's volleyball team here, the club team? I believe you traveled a little bit with them too.
Yeah, I did, dude. Yes. I did. I was able to go to each of the Big Ten venues that they went to. So my favorite trips were Elgin, Illinois, Schaumburg, Illinois, which were neutral sites. It's a part of the MIVA conference. So it's the, Midwestern Intercollegiate Volleyball Association is what it is. That's the MIVA. And there are a bunch of teams that they compete against, and they travel around the country. They got to go to, the last few years since I've been here, they've gone to Phoenix, Arizona. They've gone to Vegas. They've gone to a bunch of different Big Ten sites. Iowa, they've been to Illinois, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Michigan, Purdue. And my favorite trip, honestly, was Kansas City. So, and I kind of got off scot-free, actually. That's a funny story. Is my man Clark, who's now at Central Michigan, who was running the show and the club when he was here, he was like, we would enjoy having you pay to come along with us, because every member of the club pays dues, right? That's like any sport here or any club here. They have to pay to get in and like to have the right to travel. So Clark was like, yeah, if you paid, it would be awesome. But under the table, he was like, if you don't pay, you can still come. And so I just didn't pay for 2 years. I'm traveling around the country with them. And then I said, sorry, guys, I got to go over here because I got to work for Big Ten. So I literally have a tab that's run up with them. And it's just unpaid.
That's awesome, man. You really can't ask for anything much better than that. Just getting to travel for free, spend some time with the guys. Pretty good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when you're talking about how you experience interact with not just collegiate athletes, but also professional athletes now, a lot of that has come through your experience with the At the Podium podcast. Can you kind of talk about how you got connected with those guys at first?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. So shout out At the Podium. Shout out Manny Amezcua, my boss, as well as Chrissy McEwen, and a few others that I won't even go as far as to name. But we're working on a great team over there. So the Podium group, okay, let me start there, is a leadership group that essentially is talking about how do I want to say this? How to maximize your teamwork and like your togetherness. And it's a business coaching platform. So it's like identifying how to grow your organization and get better. But then my boss, Manny, he is the CEO at Mass Mutual Great Lakes, which is a financial firm that's based in Detroit, Southfield to be exact. But he is an unbelievable finance guy. He's leading in personal finance and financial education for athletes, entertainers, as well as high-performing CEOs. And so that's what he does. But to grow his business, he thought about, let me do a podcast and let me bring in clients who I would like to interview to learn about their kind of background and their portfolio and some of their experiences so I can better cater their financial plan to what they do, right? And so they do all types of people that are in athletics. They've done like Khalif Raymond, who's with the Lions. They did Dwayne Casey, who's Pistons coach, as well as Raptors coach, championship winning. They've done Greg Kelser, who was a champion at Michigan State, and a whole slew of others over the last 2 years. Here's where it gets interesting. I went to Darian Harris, who is Michigan State's director of NIL, right? And he's been there in that role for 3 years. And I went to him and said, hey, I would love to learn about your business because I want to be in the athlete marketing, engagement, and NIL side of things going forward. And when I was preparing, much as you did for this show today, I went everywhere I could over the internet to find information about Darian. And he too went on Podium. And I loved how Manny was speaking to him. I loved how welcome he felt. And I loved the elements of production that happened for that show. So I tried to find somebody to reach out to with Podium. So I did the interview with Darian, and then quickly thereafter, back in September of 2023, I went to Chrissy McEwen, who's now my direct supervisor, and said, do you have any thoughts about me coming in to see the show or to learn from you guys about how you produce it? And she goes, I'll do you one better. We want an intern. And I went, okay, we're there. And so it wasn't until January of 2024 where I got fully locked in, and now I'm on contract with them doing work each week for them.
Even if the path was a little bit curved, took a little bit to kind of understand how it was going to go. It worked out in the end. Now
That's right.
That's pretty sweet.
That's right.
What's cool is he, like the guy who made the At the Podium podcast, ended up doing it kind of as a little bit of a substitute for his finance stuff. Mm-hmm. I pretty much made the Joe Dez Hour to help with my high-risk, high-reward crypto investments, get people to invest in
100%.
No, that's not true. That's completely shit.
That was a good story, Joe. I was going to agree with that. Wow.
That's not true at all. Well, what's cool about that, I feel like it's very rare that you see somebody try to connect their company through the podcast means and not end up just seeming like cliche. Like a lot of the times it'll seem like you can tell like he's doing this so he can funnel in business to his business. It's
Absolutely.
Not something that he enjoys. I've watched a few of the At the Podium episodes because I wanted to check it out before this.
For sure.
They care about the guests. They care about what the show is actually going to be. It's not just, are putting this out every week, so we have like traffic flow to our website.
That's right.
It's something they actually care about producing. So what's been one of the biggest lessons you've learned in your short time there so far? Because you have just started, obviously. So
yeah. So my boss, Manny, he has made amply clear. He said this phrase each time I've gone up there, and I've only been up there 3 times so far. So I'll just preface by saying that. But I've learned so many nuggets from him in such a short time. He's somebody who's filled with wisdom and anecdotes and stories. I went to him during a time where he was preparing for an episode. And so I snuck into his office and I was asking him because one of his friends, Ben Newman, who's a performance coach, he's a graduate of Michigan State. He's somebody who I've looked up to and who I've met actually. I wanted to share with Manny the story of how I met Ben. And then to close, after I did that, I said, you know, sir, I wanted to let you know I'm doing a podcast of my own, and I desire to have Ben Newman on the show. And you know what he said to me? He said, Ben's really busy, but I think he'll make time for it. And he's like, you're such a kid that, you know, is certainly like hardworking, and you have this innate ability to reach out to people. And he said, closed mouths never get fed. And I went, oh my goodness, that just opened a new kind of perspective and a new vision for me of like, one of my greatest assets that I have is connecting with people and making sure that they are heard, that they are seen, and that their story is told, and that I can identify myself and my story with nearly anyone in this world. And so it's like, no one is off limits, because as long as I open my mouth and as long as I speak eloquently about what I desire and what I want and how I want to bring people together. And so he told me, he said, closed mouths never get fed. I reached out to Ben and we're trying to put a show together. But that's just a small anecdote.
I didn't really understand that saying before when I heard now that you put it in that context, it makes way more sense. I've heard that a few times throughout my life, the closed mouths don't get fed, but I think last time I heard it was like 10 years ago.
Okay.
I barely understood. Well, I was barely understanding the alphabets.
That's
stuff.
right.
So,
That's right.
No, it's funny to hear it now in that context because it makes a lot more sense. It's like, you know that whole saying about the destination doesn't matter, it's the journey of this whole thing. It took me years to understand that's a metaphor about life, that you're not supposed to be waiting for your final end goal. It's that time when you're 20, when you're 30, when you're grinding out those moments that you should appreciate.
Yes.
Took the longest time. Because everyone talks about it in shows, everyone talks about it in movies like it's some joke, but the sayings did come from a real place. The reason that closed mouths don't get fed, it's saying that if you don't go out for what you want to do, you're never going to get anything back. There's no way for it to eventually happen.
You're right. And I think in our business, it's so common for people to look at a mountaintop and say, I need to get there, right? But the more that you're fixated on the mountaintop of getting to where you desire to go, the more liable you are to stumble along the way and cut corners and fall off the mountain, right? And have to be restarted from square one. So I think there are a few different kind of metaphors and ways that we could look at that from a deeper perspective. But I love what you said there.
Yeah, no, a lot of different metaphors that can be broken down, fully understood. I want to make sure I get the name on this one right. Got to show you a little bit of the research that Joe Dez Hour is capable of. Back in 2021, Kenneth Walker K9 game at Michigan, or at MSU versus Michigan.
That's right. You
ended up selling your your ticket to that game for more than you ended up selling or buying your entire season ticket package. Where you were interviewed by the Detroit Free Press, Christina Hall, where you talked about that experience. Kind of wanted to ask you, did you end up regretting selling that ticket after the K9 game?
Oh my goodness. That is unbelievable, Joe. Wow. So, folks, let me just say one thing. Let me have a sidebar here. I have seen this man do his work, and I have so deeply yearned for having this same situation happen directed at me that the fact that it's happening is like mind-numbing. So with that being said, that was a great interview, by the way. I enjoyed that. That was Caden Hamwork and I got stopped right by Spartan Stadium with like 2 days before the game. And she was just there taking notes and thought we were students, which of course we were, and broke it down with us, talked about the game. I didn't sell every ticket I had. So that's what I was saying is, okay, I sold my ticket to my neighbor in my dorm that year, Selena. She went to the game, and then my dad flew in. So I went to the game with my dad. We were sitting on the 50-yard line. I mean, like middle of the lower bowl. It was elite. So I was there. I was happy to be there. And that was one of the best days, honestly, that I've had, maybe best weekends in all of my time at Michigan State. But yeah, I gained $240 for selling that ticket out of nowhere. As a freshman, dude, I needed that change, and I got it.
I'm happy you ended up getting a separate ticket too, because at first I was reading that, I was like, $240 is awesome, but that's the K-9 game. That's like the greatest game MSU has had the last 3 years.
That's right.
But no, you got in, you got to watch it with your dad, and you made $240. Don't think that's pretty bad at all.
Dude,
that's a pretty good deal.
Let me tell you something else. That was the first time that my father came to Michigan State. And he got to see what was going down in history, arguably, as one of the most impressionable games Michigan State's ever played.
Sure.
And campus was bustling. We were like getting loud. There was college game day. There was big noon kickoff for Fox. It was environment among all environments. I mean, let me tell you something, Joe. To me, that was the threshold of college football and what it should be. And the fact that my pops, who's a great, great sports fan and football fan, was here for that, and we got to share that together. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, can you go a little deeper into what sharing that moment with your dad meant to you, basically? That throughout your life, he's one of the people who's cared for you, and then he comes up to your college, you end up watching a great game, you finish off the story.
Yeah, that's my guy. That's my guy. And I'm kind of, honestly, now that you asked that question, I'm getting a little bit emotional about it, just because we have been through a lot, man. So here's what I'll say, is my parents got separated when I was 9 years old. And so growing up, well, and actually, let me preface, even before that, he was on the road a lot because he was traveling for work. And so it went from him being on the road and being gone for probably half of the year, each year, to now they're separated and I need to commute back and forth and like split time between parents' houses, right? So that's where it started to get a little bit tough. And I feel like there have been quite a few ways in which we've been able to stay close together. Like we played golf together, for that whole time, for all of life. That's our sport. In fact, I was just on the phone with him like an hour ago. He was telling me about his recent round. But we play golf. We have like gone to concerts over time together, which is great. We've traveled for sporting games. We've gone on week-long trips together. So we've stayed close together. And I think like I would love, and I think about this, even being 20, going on 21, I would love to have my parents together, even today. But the thing is, both of them have stayed in lockstep with their vision for where I'm going, that to me, when I call them, it's almost like they're still together. Because one of them will say, yeah, your dad thinks this, and your mom thinks this. And I'm going, you people don't even talk to each other. Like, what is that? How in the world? But they know what each other's feeling and thinking. And so it's a really special situation. And for him to come out, I'll tell you this, he's from LA, he's from Southern California. And so I grew up a USC fan, University of Southern California. And so I would travel for USC football games for all of my life growing up, to the effect that, and I'm not making this up, Joe, I've probably been to 60 USC games of all time in different locations. Like, we've gone to Ohio State, Nebraska, Hawaii,
Hawaii?
Yeah.
Damn.
For USC football. I've gone to each of the Pac-12 schools except for Utah, right? So it's like, man, we've been around. Going to Miami for the Orange Bowl. Like, all these things. But he and I are so strongly bonded because of those times and because of how he has made an effort to keep showing me these great things and these beautiful experiences together, even post when my parents were no longer together. And it's that effort and that energy and those trips that I'll never forget, ever. But this Michigan State one was an important one because when I was about 8 or 9, and I could see that they were starting to kind of be separate a little bit, I had the mentality switch of, I'm my own guy. I don't need to be tied to this USC culture anymore if I don't want to. And I still have. I've stayed in touch with it. But it was that time where I had the freedom of thought and mentality to choose another school. And I chose Michigan State. And I'm now here. And so for him to watch that and be okay with watching his son become his own guy and say, I'm going to go support him, that's how much that meant. Is because it's been 10 years in advance that I've been dreaming about making this happen. And now it was there. And the first guy to show it with me or to share it with me was him.
Yeah. But one of the first things you and me ever bonded over was that USC connect. USC was my dream school for years when I was growing up. And being the school that you grew up with, not your dream school in the end, but the one that you grew up in, basically. Then we both ended up at Michigan State. Everything worked out in the end pretty good.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, but I want to talk a little bit more about that stuff with your dad. You went on trips with him, you traveled with him, you went to sporting events constantly with him. How much of an effect did that have on what you do now and the fact that your life revolves around sports?
The most. The most. I remember there was a story that he probably won't like that I'm bringing up if he's watching this, but let me do this. He was watching United States Olympic hockey, one of the Olympic years. It probably would have been 2012, I think. Yeah, that's about right. Or no, 10, because 10 was Vancouver. Yeah. 2010. And I was like, man, I want to go outside and play ball with you. And he was like, no, man, I'm watching the Olympic hockey game. And that impressed upon my mind because of how greatly he desired to be in that environment and like immersed with what's happening, right? And so I think from that young age I'll bring you all the way back, Joe. I went to my first USC football game ever when I was 1 year old. I was literally in a carriage, and I was at Palo Alto, California, Stanford, USC, 2004, in September. And, dude, since then, I have been so deeply enriched with sporting experiences that I can't help but think he's revealed to me what it takes to be a part of a community. He revealed to me what it takes to learn the game. He revealed to me the history behind the game. And as soon as I grasped the magnitude of the intersection of culture and history and high-level, athletic ability and what it takes to climb that mountain we were talking about earlier, then it just all gelled for me. And so I think it was like, it was the only thing I ever knew from growing up of like, you're going to be involved in sports. We want you here. This is how it's going to go. And I loved the effect that seeing different cultures had on my understanding of the life around me, right? And the people and the things and the environments that are different from what I know. And so these are lessons I've always taken up. And now today it's like, I want to build my own culture because I saw how much of an effect it has on all these different people.
You just saw how it can touch thousands of people without it being that different. It's one team affecting so many people different ways. That is something really cool to experience. I've been thinking about this last 2 minutes. I'm going to say it's real tough. But it's funny how the Stanford trees end up getting you lost in the forest of sports. Now you kind of been trapped in here. Okay. Stupid. That might get cut from the episode. I had to say it, man. It's
that's facts, Joe. You're right.
No, so many tiny things when you're younger can influence how you act now, what you like now, and the fact that I feel like I'm taking a wide leap of faith here. I obviously don't know if it is true for you, but when you're doing these sporting events or when you're working them, when you're filming them, when you're announcing them, it probably gives you a little nostalgia about being with your family at those events and being a young child. I said Kyle and then Chid. I don't know how I messed up Chid and child.
That's my gosh. You're right. And I think the reason why I do what I do came later, but it came as a byproduct of understanding where I had been and how I grew up. So I'm one who believes it's all tied together. And I believe that there have been periods of time in my upbringing that were divine intervention. People and situations were placed upon my life and my family for a reason and at a particular time. And every time I get behind a mic, or in front of a camera, or speaking to people about where I'm going, the best thing I can do is tell them where I've been. Because it's the story. It's the fact that the story is already written, but I'm still living it out every single day. That inspires me and drives me. And so I would say you're entirely right. That's how I view it, is that it's one full circle experience every single day of like, I've seen this before. I know what this is. I have the roadmap because it's been revealed to me by family, by friends, and by experiences.
Yeah, one person who was put into your life that seemed to have a pretty big impact on you was Duke Brennan. Can you talk about your relationship with him a little bit? Grand Canyon University.
Yeah. So, okay. Awesome you did that. Shout out DB because it was Duke's birthday yesterday.
Oh,
so
nice.
Conveniently,
Good
I
time.
mean, we're sitting here April 7th. It was April 6th, that Duke's birthday. And my man's 21 and living it up after a amazing round of 32 run with Grand Canyon. Duke and I go so far back. It's not even funny. I mean, I don't remember a time, honestly, where he wasn't in my life. His family moved in to Wilsonville, Oregon, where I'm from, a year or so after we did. And so we were both like 2. And he's 3 weeks older than me. My birthday's coming up here shortly. And so he's always kind of held that over my head. And he's always been the bigger one. Because literally he's grown to being 6'10" and like 250 pounds of just steel.
That's not even just a bigger one. That's just you're never going to be able to match that guy.
Absolutely
6'10", a giant.
No, it's crazy. And I know how he's worked to get there, so I'll preface by saying he deserves every single ounce of the physique he has. I mean, he's done what is necessary. But he and I grew up together, man. So we grew up on Iron Horse Street in Wilsonville, Oregon. And we're about literally 4 houses down from each other. And so every single day, dude, from kindergarten to first grade to all the way up through grade school, he and I were hanging out with each other, doing things together, having Nerf wars, playing pickup basketball, like whatever it is, the kid activities, and just built our community around the fact that we had probably 5, 6, 7, even up to 10 kids who were our same age or within a year or two to either side who wanted to play and wanted to be active. So my relationship with him started over being kids and not knowing anything about the world. But in 8th grade, he moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Now, this is ironic because my mom is from New Jersey. Her sister, my aunt, moved to Phoenix like 27 years ago now, 30 years ago. Maybe a few less, maybe 25, but as I'm thinking about. But Duke and his family moved from my street in Wilsonville, Oregon, to less than a mile from my aunt in Chandler, Arizona. What?
What are the chances?
Like, come on, man. You can't make that up. And so Duke, we kind of separated for 8th grade and then early high school. But I remember one of our first phone calls, where we were getting reunited, and starting to share some things about life and what we had missed. He said, "Bri, I'm thinking that I'm going to blow up here. And I think that if I keep on this trajectory, I'm going to become something great." And I listened to him when we were 14, 15, and went, really? Like, I'm not sure about that. Come on. But he said it with such conviction. And he just put his foot in the ground and worked all throughout COVID that this dude literally went from 1 offer to 21 Division I offers. He committed to play at Arizona State. He is the only person ever besides James Harden to play in every single Arizona State basketball game as a freshman. So just power to where that is. And then he said, you know what? He called me last year and he said, man, my run at Arizona State is over. I'm going somewhere else. We're shaking it up. And he made the move to Grand Canyon. And I went, okay, so staying at home, staying in Phoenix. Grand Canyon's an interesting place to go. But he told me, he said, I believe in what they said. I believe in what they're doing here. And who would have thought that Grand Canyon wins 31 games this year on the back of Duke, accruing 6, 7, 8 rebounds a game and being a difference maker for that squad. they just went to the round of 32 out of nowhere. And it's like they won the WAC, regular season, and conference. Duke was a leader for their club as a sophomore, and they won their first NCAA tournament game of all time in his first year. And it's like every time that he has made a life-altering move, he has shared with me how it feels and how he's preparing for it, and he's leveled up every single time. And so I take lessons from him. He and I go back and forth every so often, checking in. And that's my guy. That's always going to be my guy.
From like an outside view, it seemed like he was just insanely lucky, but luck is just a byproduct of hard work. And the fact that he was able to make that decision, played in every single game as a freshman at Arizona State, and saying, I'm not going to stay comfortable here. I want to switch over. I want to try something new.
Yeah.
Ended up getting the first NCAA tournament win for Grand Canyon University ever in his first year there.
Yep.
That's something that nobody expects to happen.
Nope.
And I'm watching the game with my roommate. I turn it on. I sent you a text right after this. Right as I turn the game on, Duke hits it too. He ends up hitting a layup. Stretches out the arm, lays it in right away. I'm like, that's B-Rex guy. I know him.
Yes.
That is something that you don't get to see often. And seeing somebody from that young, 14 years old, you're 14 as well, talking with him at the time, seeing him commit to something and seeing the product of it come out on the other end, how much did that influence you and your style of work and your work ethic?
Man, it was like, I won't even say, and not to discredit your question, because the question is great, but it wasn't the style of work. It was that there's always going to be somebody who is chasing after you, and there's always going to be somebody chasing in front of you. So what that means is you've got to run your own race. And when you get to where you want to go, and when you're in these positions to reach out and to make fellowship with a guy who's excelling, then you got to take it and run with it. Because, and here's why I say that. After all of that story I just told you, I never thought it would be possible to see Duke play in college. I never considered it. And then Arizona State gets a berth to the first four in Dayton, Ohio. And I'm here at Michigan State as a sophomore. He was a freshman because he reclassified. Yeah. That's something that we got to know about the story. He's at Arizona State, and I'm watching the selection show and go, are you kidding me? They just got picked to go to Ohio. I'm like, what? I can make this happen. So I make a phone call. I go, D, do you have tickets? Like, is your family going? Like, how can we make this work? He goes, Bryan, the family isn't going. He's like, I'll sign you 2 tickets right now. I went, bro, you can't even, like, what? So literally, I drove my roommate Eric, shout out Eric Burke. I drove his Dodge Charger down to Dayton, Ohio to see Duke play in what will probably be, and after all of this story, maybe it's not the end of the road, but probably the first and only time I'll ever see him play in college. And that was like unbelievable, just to see how that happened. But I come back to your question though, because he is somebody who's always been connected to me in some way or another. And so my relationship with him and seeing him do this has reinforced to me that if you have a connected friendship and if you are there by somebody's side, then they're going to reciprocate. And he's done that to me, for me, in droves. And it's just been really special to know that there's somebody who's attaining great levels of success across the country, but he still cares. And I still care for him. And we have those texts and those phone calls that are influential, that make me want to be better. And it's like, dude, he's always been there. And from what I can tell, barring something crazy, he's always going to be there. So that's how I would answer that question.
Can you take us back into the emotions of that first 40 in Dayton, Ohio, seeing one of your best friends when you were younger playing collegiate ball in front of you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Driving down, I remember this. I stopped in, I went with my guy Jeb Brocky, who is my same age here at Michigan State. I went with Jeb to this game, and he and I were driving down, and he just let me have the floor. I was sharing stories about where we had been and what our childhood was like. And dude, to tell you like to try and put into words quite what that meant. First off, Arizona State was playing Nevada in that first 4 game. They literally beat the Wolfpack by 25. So it was never a game. I mean, they just started hitting shots. But the first time I saw Duke get on the floor was something that just put into perspective what it means to have somebody like that in your corner and to sacrifice to show that you care. Because, man, I drove 4.5 hours to see him play. And he reserved tickets for me to ensure that I could do it and not have to bear the financial burden, right, of doing that. So it was like, it was about the story, it was about the sacrifices and that we had made to make that happen, and everything came together in that day. So that was so surreal. That to me, which is funny because it's like, man, that wasn't even at Michigan State. Like, that wasn't even at my college. But that's one of my best moments in college, without a doubt.
You both put in a little bit of effort from each side. He got you the tickets. You ended up taking a 4-hour drive there. You watched the selection show to see where they ended up getting placed. Mm-hmm. Seeing Ohio, seeing a place that you could actually drive to, I can't imagine the feeling from it.
The wheels just started spinning, right? Both literally with the Dodge Charger and figuratively of like, we can make this work. And I'm somebody who's an idea man. I mean, I'll tell you this. This is another side story. Sophomore year as well, I flew to Seattle, Washington to watch Michigan State, Washington in Hunky Stadium over there. And I did it for $11 both ways. I found a way to make it work. So I flew literally on Alaska. I stayed in one of my best friends from home, his dorm, when he wasn't even there because he got COVID. And so, like 2 days before I was going. And so I go, man, I'm still coming. I'm not going to cancel it. But I stayed with him. Amelia Bishop, who's also at Seattle Pacific, hosted me for a couple days. And so it just came together. It's that culture. It's that community. And we found a way, to make it work. But I'm that guy. I'm unafraid to reach out. I'm unafraid to do things that may seem very difficult and to plan things so that, I will be able to maximize my time. That's just who I am.
It's the whole iron sharpens iron thing. If you're alone, you're never getting sharpened from the other people pushing against you. But when you have people, when you have community, you're sharpening off of the other person. You're learning from them. That's awesome. Can you talk about a little bit? I saw this on your socials a little bit. I don't know if there's an actual meaning behind this, but just in case there is, I want to know. What is the Ville mentality?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's meaning. So here's what I'm going to say. The truth is that because of the way I think through things, and this would actually be an interesting question to speak to you on, about having an inner monologue and like how you think and how you voice what you think. Because of the way I think and go about my approach to sharing messages, to communing with people, there's meaning to every single thing I put out on social media. Every single thing. And there's an underlying attitude or belief or story behind every single thing. Ville mentality harkens back to Wilsonville, Oregon. Ville, right, is kind of where that's separated. That was started within our community by our head football coach, shout out Adam Gunther, who just won his first state championship in what I think is his 12th or 13th season. Been there 5 times, just got over the hill. But he says Ville mentality. He kind of brought that to the players, and the players kind of use that as their rallying cry, as it were, to kind of bring each other together and get the best out of everybody on their team. So that's literally my hometown, Wilsonville, and just the attitude that football program for the high school has about how they conduct business.
And what I saw is when you were younger, you were the manager for that football team. Can you kind of talk about that experience, how that melded together with broadcasting?
Yes. Yeah. So here's where it gets interesting. When and I know I've said that a few times, but it really feels like there's a dull part and then there's an active part. What happened was I could never play football because of my medical kind of standing. I was born with a condition that is challenging to play contact sports because of the way it affects brain and neck and head, and how all of that relates bodily wise. And so until 7th grade, I could never play football because doctors, neurosurgeons, PTs everywhere would say, you can't, you're ridiculous for thinking you could play football. It won't work. And it crushed my soul every single year. I heard that and I would literally cry, Joe. I literally would sit there and just sulk. Like, I can't play football. This is horrible. Because I so badly wanted to be a part of it. And 7th grade, there had been enough change to the technology. There had been enough change to the medical care and enough change to my body. I was now one of the bigger guys in my age group, to where they said, you have to go. You can play football. And I was like, wow, are you kidding me? So literally, I played football tackle-wise, 7th and 8th grade. And 8th grade, I kind of hurt my back a little bit, so I had to be off of the field. But what happened was, in 8th grade, when this happened, my coaches, who know my backstory and are parents of kids who I grew up with, they came to me and said, well, you may not be playing, but we want you involved. And so I remember feeling like distraught, man, about the fact that I had to give up the dream of playing football. And I had a conversation with my mom, and my mom has always, every time that there's been a pivotal decision to make, she's the one who's reinforced it and said, this is where you got to go. Every time.
Mom's always no.
That's right.
Yeah, every time.
And with this one, she said, listen, it was a Friday that I was kind of thinking about it, and I left practice, and she even came to the field, and she was like, I see how much this is affecting you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about it over the weekend, because the coaching staff offered me a manager position to be an assistant coach, and at the time I went, I don't want to be seen in a different light than being a football player. I don't want to be seen as less. I don't want to be seen as not as valuable as the guys who make that 4th down stop, or that 3rd down stop, who passed that touchdown, who received that touchdown, who run back that kick. And it really hurt me, man. And it was weird because I'm sitting here at what age? 12? And I'm considering this of what the ramification would be of being seen. But that's how I felt. And so I broke it down with my mom, and she said, we should really think about this. We should really go. We should really consider what it would look like if you stepped away. And I remember thinking through it that whole weekend, counseling her in, and Monday I went back to practice, and I said, guys, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to put it down. And they said, my coaching staff, I will be, and I'm even getting chills just remembering this. They said to me in that time, they said, do you want to be the one to tell the team, or do you want us to? And I was in tears, dude. I was sobbing because of how emotional it was. And I pulled myself together and I said, guys, I'm going to tell this team how much they mean to me. And I'm going to be, I'm going to be the one who informs them. And so they said, how do you want to do it? I said, let me just get up and speak to them. And so I'm not messing with you, Joe. It was like the hand of God was placed on my shoulder. And this is, one of the things that is so fulfilling and prophetic about where I've gone is, and what I'm doing is, I just started speaking, and thoughts and feelings were rushing out of me. And in that moment, I look around and I see that the team and the coaches are crying. And I brought them to tears based on what I was saying and my message. And my message, in short, was, I don't want to be seen differently. I'm going to do everything I can to be a part of this and contribute at the highest level. And I'm not going to stop working until the job is done. And that's where it started. That's where managerial things started. That's where I realized that I had a gift in speaking and sharing messages. And even the coaches went as far as to send my mom an email that same day, that night. And they were like, we've never seen this before in a 12-year-old kid. Like his composure and compassion to share this story and have it make sense and resonate to 12-year-olds. Like, what is happening? Like, this is special. And that's where I grew up. That's where I said I can be involved in sports in a different way than on the field. And look at where we've come to.
The moment of seeing your teammates crying, seeing your coaches crying, the grown adults in the room, just from your words, I imagine that stuff. You can see that stuff with you now.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Brad. That's really cool because it's tough, especially at that age. When you're 12 to 14, that's where people's opinions matter so much back then. You were saying you didn't want to be seen as different from people.
That's
you were
right.
worried about that when you were making the decision. It's not an easy thing. But I imagine now that had to affect your humility 100 times. Mm-hmm. That is something that when you're at your weakest, when you're at your youngest, when you're at your most vulnerable, you were able to stand in front of everybody, share your message, share what you truly felt. You didn't back down. And I just can't imagine that. Like being in that room, seeing that, I can't imagine it. If you were getting grown men to send emails to your mom saying, this is something we haven't seen before, that is just something that's going to stick with you. And now it has. We've talked about throughout this entire show. There have been multiple things that have come in that have shaped you, have shaped your experience. That's the reason you're doing what you do now.
You're right.
It comes back to that it's the journey, not the destination. Mm-hmm. It's not one event that makes something happen and decides it completely.
Yeah.
It's the hundreds of days, the thousands of moments, the millions of seconds that are happening that shaped you, made you who you are. Right now, we've gotten a little bit deep. We've gotten very philosophical. We're going to break it up with a little more happy segment here. So, yeah, I'll cheer you up a little bit.
Dude, I'm excited.
So right now what we got is an Explain That Photograph segment going on. One of the first times we're doing this. I got 3 photographs for B-Rec here. I'm going to throw them on the screen. I'm going to let him explain these. What is What is this first one?
Senior photos. So my senior photos were taken by my friend Cade Butterworth, his mom, Lindsay. And she and her family, the Butterworths, have a membership at Oregon Golf Club, which is by and far the most exclusive golf course in the state of Oregon. It's not even close. And so she invited us to come up to the mountaintop where that course resides. And it's really cool because it is right on the Willamette River and it's on a mountaintop and there's like fields of gold, as you see, that you can just sit in. And so literally, that's me looking fresh and fly. And that was a part of my outdoor series of my senior photos at Oregon Golf Club.
Young B-Rec. How about this one?
That is in this house. That is me introducing my roommate Eric to the wrath of B-Rec. That was one night. Dude, I just pulled out the ladle and started to rip. And literally, I was going around smacking the ladle on different things in the house. And going like, hey man, this is my crib now. I'm the leader. And I was like acting as if I was some captain, like some show. Being some driver of men, you know? So
you're the drill sergeant.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly what that was. That was just in this house. That was one of our wooden, orifices to get some grub in, and I was just nailing it, So.
Have you ever seen Full Metal Jacket by any chance?
Honestly, I haven't.
Let me tell you that. Beginning of the whole movie's terrifying, to be quite honest, but there's a guy named something Pyle is his name, and then he's one of the cadets who joined. You see his mental state just break progressively over and over. And the drill sergeant I love. It was very funny, but you can see him just abusing this guy. Life-changing movie, let me tell you, Mal. If you ever get the chance to watch it.
Now that you say that, Joe, I wonder if my friends, because I have something like 3, 4, 5 close friends who are in the military right now.
Oh, yeah?
And I wonder if they've seen it. I got to ask them.
You have to ask them.
When we jump out.
Yeah, it was funny. I'll bring this up real quick. So you went to West Point to visit your friend a little bit ago. Mm-hmm. You and me both have the same tank top. If I have a picture, I'll throw it right in. It's a tank top that says Chef Point from Don Mazzetti, BroScienceLife, one of the greatest YouTubers. I'm not sure how much you know about him, but he is what me and my brother used to watch all day, every day. It's what got me into lifting when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, for sure.
Great guy. He's you ever heard of Bradley Martin?
Yeah.
Big with the Nelk Boys now.
Yes.
But before the Nelk Boys, it was him and Don Mazzetti, who were the 2 main guys on YouTube for lifting. shaped my entire personality. Like, genuinely, everything about me could be tracked down to Dom Mazzetti and his BroScienceLife videos about. Oh, it's just so good. No, we'll talk. I could talk about this for hours. But
we could.
Yeah, we're gonna continue on this. We got one last picture.
Yeah. So this is awesome. This is obviously you see me on the right hand of that photo, and Caden Handwork, who I mentioned, is also he's becoming a great writer for Impact and somebody who's in Spartan Sports Report. He does a lot of great things, but he and I got really close our sophomore year. And he and I were together watching football, and Kirk Herbstreit was on a Monday night football game, and I went, wait a second, who is on the broadcast crew for Michigan State, Ohio State during this upcoming week? Because we were scheduled to play the Buckeyes. And I was like, oh, I need to figure this out. So I literally went to the internet and said, who's doing the game? It was ESPN. Okay, when is it? It's a primetime game. So it's probably going to be Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler. And so I went, what? Wait a second. So I searched up Chris Fowler. I followed him on Instagram. And I go, Handwork, watch this. And literally, this is just me flaunting my... Remember what I said earlier, Joe? About how I feel like I can connect people and I feel like my story resonates and I have this innate ability to network properly and like get to know people. I said in my head, I was like, I'm going to put this to the test right now. So I DM Chris Fowler out of nowhere and go, hey, my name is Bryan Rector. I am a sophomore at Michigan State. I work for Big Ten Plus, Spartan Vision, and I'm aspiring to be you, basically, is what I said, in short. And I was like, maybe he'll respond, maybe he won't, but I forgot about it. Well, that Tuesday, the next day, we had a basketball game in Breslin Center, and am I allowed to cuss on the show?
Yeah, my words would be bleeped out.
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
We're not family friendly anymore. This is Joe Dez After Dark.
Dude, we were at the basketball game, sitting there, and I was with Caden, and I look at my phone and go, holy shit, Chris Fowler just DM'd me back. I'm like, what? This dude goes, Bryan, thank you for the message. I would love to meet with you when we come into town on Friday. Well, I'm like, bro, oh no. So I'm like, dude, I start quaking and I shoot back. I'm like, Mr. Fowler, thank you for everything. Like, he hasn't even shown me anything, but I was like, thank you for everything.
Just starstruck, dude.
Because he responded and he took the time to let me know what it is. And he said, listen, Friday I'm busy, but we're coming in Friday. Saturday before the game, I'll be prepping in the Mayhem bus, as we're seeing on the screen here. Why don't you come by? And I went, what is happening right now? And so I told Caden, I was like, dude, we're doing this, and we are doing everything we can to get right there. So we go up to do you know the parking lot by IM West, between West and Spartan Stadium?
Yes. So
the Mayhem bus and all the TV crews were parked right there. So we walk up, and there's a security guard who puts her arm out, and she's like, you shall not pass. Yeah. Literally like Gandalf up there. I'm like, bro, okay, fine. I'm meeting Mr. Fowler. Yeah. So she's like, okay, well, if that's true, he'll come out. And I'm like, I DM him, and I go, this was Saturday before the game. I said, Mr. Fowler, we're here, but there's a security guard who's standing in our way. He goes, oh, no worries. I'll be out in just a few minutes. So he was getting a prep done before the game. And then he comes off the bus and literally pushes the security guard aside and says, these are my guys. And we walk up into the bus with him and are sitting there breaking down college football and broadcasting and how to get involved in the craft for literally an hour with Chris Fowler. And I met Kirk Herbstreit. I met Ty Herbstreit, Kirk's son. I met Holly Rowe. It was like unreal.
Did you meet the dog?
No, I did not.
Wasn't there?
I didn't meet Ben. That was before he took Ben on the road. Oh, yeah, okay. He only started taking Ben this year, but that was prior to that.
It's unique when you see somebody actually care that much about helping with the younger generation, especially with broadcast. I feel like with broadcast it happens a lot. with broadcasting, it happens a good amount. It's one of the few fields where it's not just the older generation wants to keep their stepping stones and then kind of put water over them for the new generation.
That's right.
It's not where they want to reveal the stones, let people step up easier and help out. Like broadcasters now, it's a lot more diluted, to be honest. There's a lot more people wanting to do it. A lot of people, I've spoken to a few who are in their 50s, 60s, who said when I started out, it was pretty easy. You just said you want to be a broadcaster, you start doing it, and eventually it's going to be you and 100 other guys, but you're still going to be doing it. Mm-hmm. But now it's something where there's programs, there's schools dedicated to it, there's high school programs even dedicated to just being a broadcaster. Mm-hmm. It's more diluted than ever, and if you want to be successful in it, you need to be near the top, and that's just how it's gone. But instead of pushing people down, the broadcasters who are successful and didn't have to deal with as much dilution are helping them move up and kind of clean up the dirty water and get to the top where they want to be if they really care about it.
Yeah.
You don't see that in most industries.
No, you don't. You don't. And I think what's come back again and again to me is the amount of humility that has been placed in my life. Because it's like, dude, why is it that I am blessed and highly favored so as to be able to meet Chris Fowler on a Saturday afternoon in East Lansing, right? I mean, it's one of those things that has been a story throughout the entirety of my life of connecting with people, and people have made a difference for me. And the best thing I can do is keep pushing that narrative forward. So whenever I do that, or whenever I'm speaking with high school kids, whenever I'm speaking with athletes at Michigan State, I like to think that I approach it with that same level of calmness and collectiveness and understanding of like, dang it, I'm in this position because of everyone else, so I'm going to keep it and even expand the field. And I think that's something that has led to a lot of good things.
Yeah, if each generation tries making it easier for the next one after them, it's going to be pretty good by the end of that product. It's going to be something where it's compounded enough where everyone's loving it, everyone's having a great time. That's the end goal at the end of the day. So you don't do too much written journalism anymore, but no. I did see your work with the Paw Print back in the early days. Reflecting back on those days, can you just talk a little bit about how your mindset's changed since you first started out, when you were covering hundreds of sporting events for your school, when you were doing the Paw Print writing, when you were just beginning your career as a broadcaster, as a writer, as a sports beat reporter, I guess would be the right way to say that. Yeah. But still, when you first started out and what you're doing now, how you feel the biggest shifts have been? Yeah. So the first is I've gained a tremendous amount of respect for the amount of viewership that the Big Ten gets. Yes. And here's what I mean by that, just to break that down. My first ever announcing job I did was our opening game for Wilsonville High School, men's basketball, my sophomore year. And that call was a radio broadcast that was literally, and I'm not making this up, John, it was Mixler.com open broadcasting software where you press start and that thing goes. And I had a USB headset that I was talking into, and people could faintly hear me. And that had 4 people on the call. 4. And I was like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. And so we went and climbed the ladder. And dude, that was something that really impressed upon me how much work would have to be done to get to where we are today, and how much more has to be done to get to where we want to go, right? Because when we were doing, you and I did the Nebraska-Michigan State volleyball game this year in 2023, that literally broke records for amount of viewership for Big Ten Plus. And when I'm considering the fact that I went from, gosh dang, 4 people watching my show to 80,000 or even more, it's like, what? And so the perspective changed because it matters that much more. But the perspective back then was great because it was like, well, people in my community care. Yeah, that's all that. But now it's world, right? So it's like that shifted. And then I have moved out of the multimedia stuff because I wanted to keep something for myself. My writing, because I write a lot still, my writing is entirely like journal-based short stories from my life that I don't check. Yeah.
platform, like, completely shut off to the outside world. Other than if I'm, like, asking for advice on how to tell a story from people who are in it, right? But I would say it's, like, I've honed in since being in college on exactly the medias that I want to use publicly and those that I think should be kept private.
I do some adrenaline stuff too. It's great for your mental health, man. It really helps just kind of putting the clutter onto a page.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to write little stories. But
yeah.
It's funny to think about all the similarities that we have now. When I first started out, it was me by myself in a little press box, maybe 4 people listening, and it was on Huddle. It was the Huddle live stream.
Okay. Yeah.
So we didn't have like a separate broadcast platform, just Huddle live stream.
That's right.
And I didn't even have a headset. We had this tiny mic that came up, and it was just one button. I'd press the button in, and whenever I pressed the button, you'd hear like. So I didn't know that for the first 2 weeks. It'd be the crinkling noise, and then it'd just be me saying like, "And she's running down the here." Like you couldn't hear any of it, dude. You would hear the beginning of it, but by the time I clicked it back off, it had covered up 5 seconds of the 6 seconds I talked for. So. Once we got past that, wearing a headset feels amazing. It feels like we're top tier, like we're top budget. Like now, things that other people would take for granted because they never experienced the alternative, we appreciate. And that's what's so huge.
That's right.
Yeah.
And who would have thought, by the way, that us two guys who started in literally Massachusetts and Oregon, the coast, would come together, and on top of coming together, would be a year or two away from aiming to acquire a career in this field, in this industry. It's miraculous, really. So many things have aligned to consider that we're on this journey together now, and we're getting to a point where it will matter a whole lot more than even it does today. And it matters a great deal today.
Yeah, the fact that we're actually from East and West Coast, 2 opposite sides of the entire country, met in the middle. Now we're both doing pretty similar things. We're loving it.
That's right.
It's unique. That doesn't happen often.
No.
Now let's talk about, this one's not as much journalism based, but you're doing a double degree right now. You're doing two separate degrees. While you've been keeping up with the broadcasting, with all your other stuff, with your interviews, how has that affected you? How has it been trying to balance not just 1 degree in that, but 2 degrees, double what most people are doing?
Yeah, I'm going to take a moment right now to not be happy with Michigan State. And here's why. Michigan State University decided that it would be really smart to withhold my diploma until the end of my quote-unquote senior year, which will be next year. But I'm finishing my communication degree in 30 days. So it's like, shouldn't I be able to get a diploma? So honestly, that kind of pissed me off. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'm going to get my funding shut off for this show, man.
Dude, I know.
They're not.
I sat there and went, what in the world? It was a headache. So, yes.
So you got to wait an extra year just to get the piece of paper.
That's right. That's right. And my advisor told me that it's because I'm not completely done with my academic track at Michigan State, even though I'm finishing the credit required for any normal person who's doing a degree to graduate. I would be scot-free. I would be looking for a job right now. But I'm not. And it's just because my sophomore year, I decided to tack on a human resources-based degree on top of communication in an effort to give myself a look at being involved in contract negotiation, athlete management, these different services, for the athlete. That's kind of where I'm pivoting to a little bit, trying to figure that out. And so that's why I did it. And it hasn't affected my load in terms of course requirement that much, which has been nice. But it's allowed me to have that versatility of saying, I love broadcasting and I love journalism, but I love people and I love athletes and I love brand deals and I love all that, which is being built. I know you've talked to many athletes about NIL, and I love that too. So it's like, well, I might look at being a representative for it down the line. And so that's what I would say. It's adapted and shifted my perspective of where I can go, but not so much the workload. And it's made me mad because I can't get my diploma yet.
I think the big thing that you hear from that with what you did there You didn't make broadcasting your end-all, be-all.
No.
And I think that's where a lot of people mess up with their dreams. They make it either this happens or I'm not happy in life.
For sure.
You have to have fallback plans. You have to have alternatives that would still make you happy and still be a successful life.
Yeah, but can I break up what you said there?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about it, and this has been a concept that I've been focusing on, is whatever I choose isn't a plan B.
Yeah.
It's what's designed to happen in my life and what's been placed in my life at the time and place that we spoke on much earlier. And I feel like even if I don't go 100% in broadcasting, I have the skills and knowledge and background to integrate it into anything I do.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, dang it, it's not A or B. That's not how I look at it. I don't see it's either this or that. I say, I'm going to build my opportunities and my connections and my amount of people that I can go to for advice and for wisdom and for helping along the way. That, dude, whatever I do, I can counsel in what I've done. And so I'm just literally trying to build this pyramid of all these different things that I can use to further my career. So yeah, I would say I like a lot of what you said. However, my thing is, it's not about A or B. It's about, dang it, I'm going to use everything to get to where I want to go.
Now I seem like a Neanderthal.
No,
Shelby, right?
No.
I know what you mean. What I was trying to say more of is you can't have it be there's one solid ending that you're happy with.
Right.
You have to be fine with an alternative ending. It
That's
can't be
right.
the same thing. Saying plans is probably the way I worded it, right?
Sure.
Because I said you have to have backup plans, which is what you're trying to not say. You're
Yes.
saying whatever the plan is, that is the plan. It might look different than you expect it is.
That's
right. Expect it to be. It's still the plan at the end of the day.
Well, and it changes as you go along, right? And you should allow it to. Because, dang it, if you hold on to the outcome or this vision that you had, and your behaviors and your actions are changing so that your ending outcome and the way you're getting there are out of alignment, that's a dangerous place to be at. And so I'm always constantly surveying the field. That's what I call it. Surveying the field, looking for what's next and identifying ways in which I can grow and get better and change and adapt to satisfy the ever-changing desires that I have, right? But for me, the one thing that isn't changing is my faith. And that's where that comes from, is man, it's not about the outcome. As you've said so eloquently, it's about how you're getting there. And so that's my focus.
I think you said it a little more eloquently than me, because that was the perfect way to explain what I was trying to say with the end-all, be-all thing. It doesn't have to be one concrete idea. There's so many different ways it can be.
Yes.
The contract stuff, you never really talked to me about that before. I think that's really cool. That would be a really cool way to still pursue sports, still enjoy it, while doing more managerial, more thing that people don't understand. Plenty of athletes, they've got to focus their time on working out, they got to focus on dietitian, they got to focus on training.
That's right.
You can't learn contract talk in that time. And you'd be able to come in, help them, make sure they don't fall in any pitfalls.
That's right.
That'd be a really good way to serve them.
Well, and too, Joe, we've talked many a time about how I'm somebody who can link people together and network and reach out to high levels of industry leaders, right? Well, I think, Joe, that I can parlay that into being a concierge service for the athlete. Whatever you need, I'm going to go and find it because I desire to help you be the best at whatever you want to do. And so, literally, I'm focused on off-the-field plans. I'm focused on post-career. I'm focused on identifying ways in which you can build your brand and your platform. That's where I want to go.
Yeah, and there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to go as far as you want to take it, Brian. Last question I'm going to ask you before I give the shout-outs, before everything wraps up here. It's been a great time. Brian, this is going to be a loaded question. Take as much time as you need for this one. What drives you?
Oh!
Yeah.
What? Oh my gosh. Okay. I'll give you 3 distinct points. Number 1 is my faith in Christ. I am Christian devoutly and will identify with that, till the end of the earth. That's something that has absolutely been a rock for me and has changed and evolved. I'm trying to see if I want to add anything onto that. I am, yes, significant believer. I was in church this morning thinking about, why am I here, right? And it's like, dang it, well, I believe, man, I believe. Now, the second piece to that is I've become a believer over time because I've seen the way that my story is unfolding. And so the second thing I would say to that is the story that I have and the way in which my family has been molded and kind of ironed out, and my health complications over times. For me, here's a little bit of a backstory, and this is deep as we're going into it, which, wow, I can't believe you hit me with that for the last question. So I was born with a condition that's a degenerative spine disorder, and essentially what that did was, I'll leave all the medical things out of it, but I'll just talk about the result, is when I was born, or even before, it was determined that there was a issue with the growth of my spinal cord and my back. And so what that means is there were conversations and concerns around whether I would be able to have the motor function and brain connectivity to walk or talk. And so it's like, man, when you're left with that situation, it was even a point of contention within my family because they said, do we terminate the pregnancy? And do we, not have this adverse situation arise? And thank goodness, by the way, shout out to mom and dad for having the faith to sit there and say, hell no, we're just going. We're going to make this happen. And whatever bridge we have to cross, we will, whether fired or not, And so it's my faith. It's the fact that because of my faith and because of my medical standing, I feel like I'm operating on borrowed time, and I feel like I've been given skills that, I had a chance of not having, and so I need to use them to the best of my ability to steward the gifts I've been given from God every single day. And that's why I do what I do. And then the last thing, to kind of be a cliche a little bit. Like people talk about family or their community, but I do everything I do for my mom and dad, and as an extension of that, for everyone that they have brought into my life, whether it be the people who I grew up with, whether it be the community that they give me, because my hometown of Wilsonville and the people who have shaped me and molded me throughout the divorce and throughout the me looking around for role models and throughout the these tough situations, that's everyone, right? That's my people. And so I would say it's my community of my circle. And I say community because I try and avoid the term of family, because family, not to I was trying to diss to it at all, but family is, you can't choose. And it's like, dang it, there were a lot of people in my life who came into my life later and chose me, and chose to be with me, and chose to help me through the tough situations that were bestowed upon me. And that is something I'm forever grateful for. So I fight for my faith, my family, community, in my words, and then as well my medical story. That is kind of something that people don't usually hear about, but something that's very important to everything I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, you put it great. A lot of things came into it, a lot of things shaped your drive, and now it's worked out. Before I let you give your shout-outs, I'm going to give you your flowers a little bit, Brian. Last year, I've talked about it a couple times on this show, not too deep. One of the darkest points in my life where I got very sad. I came back from Massachusetts, was in an area I was not familiar with. A lot of weird things were happening at the time where I was just not happy. I came into work. Brian was always there smiling. B-Rec helped me really just become positive again. One of the big things that drives me is the positive mindset. That has been something I've tried focusing on most of my life. And then when I came here, I turned all negative for about 3-4 months. It was just bad track. It was not good. It was just bad adjustment. I was away from my family for the first time ever, really. Sure. It was weird. I still remember the first time you and I met during that soccer game on the pitch. You're talking about USC, talking about Syracuse together. I had been waitlisted. You had been accepted. We both ended up at Michigan State in the end. You were a big thing to help me get back to that positive mindset, Brian. And the humility has been something huge. I used to have a little bit of an inflated ego, but that was mostly done as a joke. It wasn't a real thing. But when you do it as a joke long enough, it starts seeping in. And that gets weird. You get the imposter syndrome thing where it's, do I really feel that way or do I think that way is stupid? When you live a humble life where you care about people, where you have compassion, where you have empathy for people, and you actually care about what they say and what they do, it's a much better life. And you helped me with that. Yusuf, I've shown Yusuf on the show before. Yusuf helped me. Naya, great guy. But you guys all came together, really helped me get back to my roots, and I would not be anywhere near as happy as I am now without all of you. I want to appreciate you for that.
Dude, you're my guy. You're my guy. And seriously, is like, one thing I've realized here at Michigan State is I've been able to choose who I'm with, right? And I've been able to have discernment around, am I going to tell you how I feel? Am I going to tell you where I've come from? Am I going to share these things with you? And that's been really, really cool to acknowledge that I've had the floor, so to say, to do that, right? And you're one of those guys that I wouldn't rather, honestly, I wouldn't rather be doing it with at any time, because I know how you work, I know who you are, and I know that you and I share the ideology that we're not going to stop until we get to a place we want to be in. And I would say we're already there, but we got more to go.
Next year is going to be the takeover of B-Rec and Joe Dez.
Yeah.
It's going to be big.
It's on.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That's all I have to say. That's been my phrase lately. Is like, it's on.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Because we got people who are leaving. Yeah. We got people who are graduating. We got people who are changing what they want to do. Watch out.
Watch out,
Watch
man.
out.
Oh, before we wrap up this episode, Brian, floor is yours. Would you like to give any shout-outs to anyone who helped you get to where you are in life right now? Anyone you want to just say thank you to? Floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say shout out to my parents, man, because I feel like, and this is going to be something that they hear for the first time, because I don't really talk about this, but it's true. Is like, and I'm glad that you're hearing it because I don't share this. My parents, like, despite how many times I felt that things could have been handled differently, or they could have done things that would have helped me more in terms of, like, whether it be staying together or, like, that's really the main one, so I'll just leave it there. But my mom, like, literally, like, went back to school, changed her career path, and did everything she could to ensure that we were still going to be good and that our lifestyle wasn't going to change after they got separate. And, like, I came from a really successful family and a really amazing community where I grew up, and that's why I talk so highly about it. But the more I think about it, I'm sitting there saying, you know what, if things were different and her drive to help us was different and to pursue her passions was different, because here's a side story. My mom grew up in a situation where she was, like, very passionate about architecture and about residential design and, like, house building and how things look, how your living room is, all of that, from a very early age, and would, like, go to the library and read books about design, but didn't pursue it as a career. And so she is somebody who could look back at the age of literally 52, 51, and go, I'm going to pursue my passion now, because it's not too late, and because I have the chance and a renewed mind. And so after my parents separated, she said, I'm out. I'm going back to school, and I'm going to do it. And she's been doing it at a high level in Oregon ever since. So I love that. And that's something that was informative to me, because now I've seen, one, now that I've identified my passion at age 14, I'm going to rock with it until I drop. Because I have this blessing of saying I've known what it is to have a passion and not pursue it. And I know how much more fulfilling it is to pursue it for the first time. And I've seen that with her for the last 10 years, basically, right? And so I'm like so happy for that. And for my dad, dude, my dad has been such an amazing storyteller to me that my ability to share and like relay messages and commune with people, I feel like comes from him. And so that are those two things of like my passion and my ability to tell stories come from them directly. And I see that. And I see how their teachings on mentality and their teachings on manners and like approaching people properly, that came from them too. So I have like three-pronged things that I look at them and go, well, they didn't stay together, but they still found a way to teach me everything that I'm about today, right? And so shout out them. Shout out John Fitzgerald, because he is my English teacher from high school. He led me to be one of 5 people in my high school to get a 5 on the AP test in AP English, and that was sweet, so shout out John. But he's also the guy who gave me a platform to broadcast for the first time ever. He put me on the microphone and didn't let me stop for over 170 games, right? He was that guy. And I love it, dude. I love it. And then from there, we'll go shout out Matt McCulloch, because Matt's been everything in terms of broadcasting. And then shout out, and this is really cool, I'm going to clip this off as soon as I get it, is shout out Jim Gatto and Chris Rivers, who we didn't touch on this, but those two guys grew up, well, I say grew up, they're father figures to me, and have sons and daughters who I grew up with. We're the same age, but on the same street in Wilsonville, and they both have worked at a high level in sports for 30 years. And so they showed me that it's truly possible to get to the highest level. And they have been my backbone for my career decisions I've made time and time again. And so I would say that's what my shout out lie for sure.
Yeah, they showed you anything's really possible. Mm-hmm. Well, hope that you all enjoyed this episode, Brian. I hope that you had a great time. I had a great time with you.
No doubt.
This has been all that we have today for episode 36 of the Joe Dez Hour. We'll be back with more, better than ever, more segments, more questions, more theatrics. We're going to see how it all goes. This is it for Joe Dez and DJ B-Rec, Bryan Rector.